Story 1. The Whispering Woods. In the small village of Krasny Bereg, there was an ancient forest known as the Whispering Woods. Locals warned that anyone who entered the forest after dusk never returned. Stories circulated about ghostly murmurs and trees that seemed to move, guiding lost souls deeper into their leafy labyrinth. But these were just tales to most, until Yelena, a young journalist looking for her breakthrough story, decided to investigate. Yelena entered the forest at twilight, armed with her camera and notebook. The air was cold, biting, and the silence felt unnaturally heavy. As she walked, the trees seemed to lean in closer, branches curling above her like skeletal fingers. Soon, the whispers started, soft at first, almost like the rustling of leaves in the wind. But they grew louder, clearer. "Turn back. Leave this place. Your life ends here." Yelena's heart pounded, but she pressed on, determined to uncover the source of the whispers. She reached a clearing where a gnarled oak stood, its roots stretching out like tentacles. As she raised her camera to take a picture, she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Looking down, she saw a mass of tangled roots, writhing and pulsing like living flesh. She tried to run, but the roots shot up, wrapping around her ankles. She screamed as they tightened, pulling her down into the earth. The whispers turned to laughter, cold, mocking, and echoing all around her. Yelena struggled, clawing at the soil, but the forest was hungry. It wanted her. The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed her was the faces of all those who had come before her. Etched into the bark of the trees, their mouths open in silent screams. Story 2. The Bone Grove. In a remote corner of the Ural Mountains, there lay a forest that the locals called the Bone Grove. It was named not for its trees, but for what lay beneath the thick carpet of moss. Skeletons, hundreds of them, lay intertwined with the roots, their skulls peeking out from the soil as if trying to escape. The forest had claimed the lives of soldiers, hunters, and travelers for centuries. No one knew why they died. They simply vanished, leaving their remains to rot. Vadim was a seasoned hunter, a man who believed in logic rather than legends. One summer, he ventured into the Bone Grove, hoping to hunt rare game. As he trekked deeper, he noticed an unsettling change. The air grew colder, and the ground felt soft and spongy beneath his boots. Each step seemed to echo with a hollow sound, as if he were walking on a graveyard. At dusk, he set up camp. The night was still, too still. There were no bird calls, no rustling of small animals. Just silence, thick and oppressive. As he sat by the fire, he began to feel uneasy, as though unseen eyes were watching him. Shadows danced at the edge of the firelight, and he could have sworn he saw a figure, tall and twisted, moving among the trees. Suddenly, a high-pitched wail broke the silence. It was unlike anything Vadim had ever heard, a mix of a child's scream and the howl of a dying animal. He grabbed his rifle and aimed into the darkness, but there was nothing, only the trees, swaying slightly as if laughing at him. Then, he felt it, a cold hand on his shoulder. He spun around, but there was no one there. The fire flickered and died, plunging him into darkness. Vadim's breath came in ragged gasps as he stumbled backward. His foot caught on something hard. Looking down, he saw a skeletal hand sticking out of the ground, gripping his boot. He kicked it away, but more hands emerged, clawing at him, pulling him down. The trees groaned as the soil beneath him opened up, revealing a pit filled with bones. Vadim screamed, but his cries were swallowed by the forest. The trees watched in silence as the hunter became prey. The next day, his hunting party found only his rifle, lying atop the moss. They knew better than to search for his body. In the Bone Grove, no one left alive. Story 3. The Forest of Faces. In the heart of Siberia, there was a forest known as the Leshiy's domain. It was a place feared by all, for it was said to be the realm of an ancient spirit, the Leshiy, who guarded the forest's secrets. People spoke of how the forest came alive at night, how the trees whispered and moaned, and how the faces of those who had angered the Leshiy appeared on the trunks of the trees. Aleksei was an explorer, a man driven by a thirst for discovery. He had heard the stories but dismissed them as superstitions. One winter, he ventured into the forest, determined to map its depths. The snow crunched beneath his boots as he moved through the dense thicket. The cold wind cut through his coat, but he pressed on, ignoring the eerie stillness that surrounded him. As night fell, Aleksei set up camp. The fire's warmth was a small comfort against the biting chill. As he lay in his tent, he heard it, a low, mournful wail that drifted through the trees. He sat up, his breath visible in the icy air. The sound grew louder, coming from all directions, and with it, a feeling of dread settled in his chest. He stepped out of the tent, flashlight in hand, and scanned the area. The forest was alive with movement, branches swaying, leaves rustling, but there was no wind. He felt as if 1,000 eyes were watching him from the shadows. The flashlight beam flickered, and for a moment, he saw something. Faces. Dozens of faces, their eyes wide and mouths twisted in agony, stared at him from the tree trunks. Panicking, Aleksei turned to run, but the trees closed in. The path he had taken was gone, replaced by a wall of bark and branches. The whispers grew louder, forming words that made his blood run cold. "You should not have come. You will stay here forever." Aleksei tried to push through the trees, but they fought back, branches clawing at his face and arms. He stumbled and fell, and the ground beneath him gave way. He landed in a pit, surrounded by tree roots that twisted like serpents. The faces on the trees watched as the roots coiled around him, tightening their grip. As he struggled, one of the faces, an old man's, its eyes full of sorrow, whispered, "He takes what is his. You are part of the forest now." The roots pulled him deeper, and the cold, damp earth closed in around him. Aleksei's screams echoed through the forest, but no one would ever hear them. In the Leshiy's domain, the forest claimed all who entered.